Hello, everybody. Welcome to D.I.C.E. Hope everyone's having a good time. So let's summarize the talks. Billion-dollar franchise, billion-dollar franchise, me. Hopefully that bodes really well for us in the future. First of all, I'd really like to thank the organizers at D.I.C.E. for giving me a chance to cross off a really challenging one on my bucket list. Got to use some Vanilla Ice lyrics in a talk title. Thanks, guys. Very rare chance right there. So I'm Nathan Vella. I'm the co-founder and president at Capy. Capy is an independent game studio in Toronto, Canada. In 2003, a bunch of us got together and decided that we were going to make some games for fun. A couple of years later, in 2005, we started the studio full-time, and that means that this August is our 10-year anniversary as a studio, which I am super proud of. Thank you. Ego going up. I'm also a partner in Indie Fund. Indie Fund is a group of independent developers who pull together some resources to help other independent developers get and stay financially independent. So here's a fancy slide that shows you all the games that we made after we stopped doing work for hire. We spent about 50% of our careers, the first almost 4.5 years, doing nothing but work for hire. And then we shifted over to doing original titles. And we made a whole bunch of stuff. Over the last 5 years, we've made a bunch of games. I believe a lot of them are really good, and some of them were actually really successful as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the games from that list that we didn't do in some kind of collaboration with an external party. So basically, all of our games that we've made since 2011, we've done collaborating with someone outside of our studio. It would be super awesome if I could get the speaker's notes, too. Sorry, folks. I was just hoping they were going to come up, and they're not coming up. So I'm going to dance or something. So anyways, Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery we made in collaboration with artist and designer Super Brothers and the musical genius Jim Guthrie. We actually got tagged in partway through development of Sound Shapes to help John Mack's studio, Queasy Games, with level design, some art, and production. We collaborated with chiptunes musician 6955. He's actually one of the OG original chiptunes guys, on the soundtrack for Super Time Force. And then moving forward, our next game Below, we're making again in collaboration with Jim Guthrie, and we're even collaborating on a game with our friends at Clay. So to break it down, we've collaborated with artists, musicians, designers, and even other studios who are all not part of our own team internally. These were our most successful projects creatively. They were also the most successful projects we've done financially. And also, just as important, they were the most personally gratifying projects that we've worked on. Getting a chance to work with people that you love, admire, good friends, and seeing them kind of make great games with you has been an amazing boost for our studio. So part of this is just me blowing up my ego, but the other part of this has a real point. So this is a tweet based on a talk that Richard Lemarchand, who is ex-Naughty Dog co-lead designer on the Uncharted series, now USC professor, gave at a game lab in Barcelona. And he referred to us as the David Bowie of video games, which is the coolest thing ever. But he specifically said that because no two Capy games are alike. We experiment with form and content of our games, but we have fans that follow us through based on our identity of stylishness and experimentation and playability. Thanks, Richard. That made us feel really good. After I got over feeling really good, I looked at this and kind of said, yeah, that's what we do. That's how we believe in our games. That's what we believe in as developers. But it also kind of says something about the way that we've collaborated, about how all of our games are different, partially through the collaborations that we've had. Really, Capy has been, in a big way, defined by our collaborations, by our success in facilitating, managing, and oftentimes guiding these kind of collaborations. And we're not going to stop collaborating. We actually have a whole bunch on the go right now. And our experience, too, and drive in collaborating has given us some pretty unique perspective on collaborating with people outside of the studio. And because I'm on stage, I get to tell you those opinions. So the first section that I'm going to talk about is why should people collaborate? And the biggest reason is because it generates a whole bunch of significant opportunities. So we're all here at D.I.C.E. having a few drinks. We're going to be talking about our industry. And one of the big things that we're probably all discussing is the discoverability problem. Especially for independent developers, this is a major pain point and probably our biggest challenge going forward. There's tons of room in our industry for games cut from the same cloth, made around the same ale, kind of the same genre games, tons of space. But there's also opportunities for new games to break through And with 1,000 games a day being launched on the App Store, or hundreds of games a week being launched on Steam, there's just so much noise out there. And I think that collaboration is a way to kind of smash through that barrier. Sometimes players really only see a game's logo. Maybe they see some screenshots, they might watch a trailer, hear some music. All of those little touch points are opportunities for your game to break through and to create some hype. And I think that collaboration with people who bring these kind of new art, new music, new design are going to help those touch points really affect people. Now, collaboration won't guarantee that you break through the noise. It won't guarantee that you make any extra money. But it does provide you an opportunity and maybe even help boost you out of that and help your game bubble up. Now, collaboration also can provide a real injection of new ideas. And these ideas, when I say new, I mean actually new, not just some slight iteration on something that's already happened before. They're actually an injection of alternate perspectives that really haven't been skewed by what you've made in the past or what game has come before it. Collaborators aren't really going to look at a project and say, we're going to build on top of something, because they've actually never built anything before. And these kind of truly new art styles, truly new voices, can actually stand out really significantly. I got a picture here of Hohokum. Hohokum was a collaboration between the game studio Honey Slug and the artist-illustrator D.I.C.E. And together, they managed to generate a game that, in my opinion, is one of the most beautiful things I've seen in recent history. And it's also totally fresh. There is nothing about that game that feels like it's building upon something else. Collaboration with people outside of your studio can also help you reach new audiences. Musicians, artists, writers, they all have their own built-in audience. They've all been speaking to a community already, and hopefully they will help bring that community to your game. For Sword and Sorcery, we got covered in a lot of really non-traditional places in the media. Magazines like IDN and Applied Arts, music communities, music blogs, all these places that traditionally don't look at video games. We've even watched through the vinyl soundtrack releases of Sorcery and Super Time Force Ultra, vinyl communities be really interested in our games. I don't really believe that IDN readers or vinyl collectors are that familiar with the games that we make. But through these collaborations and the audiences that they had, they actually got introduced to our games. And I think there's kind of a compounding thing that happens there. If someone who is a big fan of vinyl sees the soundtrack, decides to look into the game, maybe takes a dabble and plays the game, if they really enjoy it, we've just kind of created an additional audience for video games on the whole. If their experience is good, they might dabble and buy something else. Collaboration is also going to give you a chance to bring new voices and more diverse experiences into video games. These collaborators are going to bring a lot of ideas that come from way out in left field. They're not looking at what's sold in the past. They're not jaded by what they know is easy to develop. And they haven't actually been brought up in the development of games, so they don't really even understand what it means to build one. And that kind of fresh perspective is something that I think games can really use and can really leverage. On the screen, I have Night in the Woods. It's a game made by Alec Holoka, who we know from Aquaria and some other great projects. And he collaborated with animator Scott Benson and co-writer Bethany Hockenberry to make this game. Scott and Bethany had never made video games before. And the game is essentially an adventure game about a cat named May. But really, the game is kind of about Bethany's experience growing up in a small town outside of Pittsburgh, mashed together with Scott's experience growing up with a bunch of punk rock kids. So basically, it's not really the normal video game that you would expect to see. And that's, I think, a huge reason why this game really stands out to me and I think has stood out to audiences. Now, lastly, and it's kind of like a weird fringe benefit of collaboration that we found, is it actually helps your studio itself. It inspires them significantly. Working with ultra-talented people kind of lights this amazing creative fire under their asses, and that fire tends to just engulf the entire studio. The act of sitting down at your desk, listening to a beautiful song that an artist that you respect has created for the game that you're making, there's just something amazingly beautiful about that happening, and it gives so much strength to the people making the games. For me, I was in university, sitting in my dorm room, drinking really cheap beer, listening to Jim Guthrie albums. So the idea that through our collaboration, I got to work with one of my favorite musicians, it really gave me a lot of strength and belief in what Capy is doing is something special. And it gave me a lot of power to keep driving through even when those productions got super difficult. There's a lot of times that people in our studio would come to me and say, like, it's kind of crazy that we're working with these people. And I can see in their eyes that that's a motivating factor. So I just whipped through a whole bunch of reasons to collaborate. But our experience in collaborating has also given me some opinions on how to do this well. And since I'm the one talking on stage, more of my opinions. So like in all talks, I have cut and pasted a dictionary definition of something. Here's the internet dictionary definition of collaboration. It's a really simple definition. And it's simple because I think it leaves a lot of the key components out. It kind of makes work for hire and a whole bunch of other things look like it's collaboration. Your shared goal is shipping a game. So in video games, one popular venue for collaborating is often going to Hollywood. From Kevin Spacey and Kiefer Sutherland, all the way through to somehow Andy Serkis and Mike Bithel's Volume, we get a lot of Hollywood actors to work on our games. Sometimes we grab a writer from an awesome TV show. Heck, we get famous musicians to work on our soundtracks and even create original songs. And I got to assume it's working because we keep doing it. And sometimes, even often, really interesting things come out of these collaborations. But I kind of wonder what would happen if these collaborations went deeper? What if they were more significant collaborations? So I'm hoping that when, on this very same stage 2 years ago, Gabe Newell and J.J. Abrams talked about collaborating together, they were actually talking about building, from the very beginning to the very end, a game together. I hope that collaboration in our industry becomes more about working together deeply rather than hiring a contract composer for exactly 64 minutes of work. So how do I think this should happen, and how do I think it can happen? So I took the pleasure of totally redefining, changing the dictionary, because I get to do that. And so I looked at what I believe how collaboration works best. And so my redefinition is two or more trusting people working together on shared creative goals with shared ownership. Okay, trust is the easy one. Like, you're not going to hire someone or collaborate with someone that you don't trust. But trust is the foundation of the house that you're building, to use that metaphor. It has to be very solid, and without it, everything will crumble. But I'm just going to move on, because that's the easy one. The biggest one for me is having shared creative goals. And I would like to differentiate. Shared goals can be finished games. Shared creative goals are something that involves a vision. It's something that involves the creative back and forth of defining what you're actually making. Everyone is sharing their creative work, their components, the art, the music, the design, as part of this bigger goal. These shared creative goals are the thing that you use to go deeper into the game, to work closer together. And it actually is what makes your collaboration feel meaningful and feel genuinely valuable. And in this weird way, having these shared creative goals kind of creates this mission from God that you're working on together. I went and did a little bit of looking up on the internet and Googling, and there's a PhD student, Robin Oppenheimer, who wrote in her thesis about collaboration, and I'm going to quote it because it's a really great quote. Shared creative goals are characterized by feeling powerfully positive, overly optimistic, and the ability to transcend great adversities and obstacles. And this is what comes out of working with a collaborator to create a common vision and shared creative goals. And I think this is really the key component of working well with people outside of your studio. Another big part of it is communication. Communication is super tough when you're a game developer and your collaborator comes from a completely different expertise. But we found that communication and generating a shared language, these are the key tools to a very strong collaboration. And they build really quickly when the people that you're collaborating with are integrated into the actual development. Now, this is going to be something as simple as giving them access to your SVN or Git, involving them in meetings, brainstorms, daily progress reports, key decisions. But it can also go as deep as actually bringing them into your studio. We were very lucky to have Super Brothers working in our office and to have part of the team from SoundShapes working in our office while we were collaborating together. And we found that communication and shared language develops almost instantly and really helps these collaborations become meaningful and impactful. But it also makes sure that you're not wasting time, wasting effort, and getting frustrated. You don't want collaborators simply dropping assets and hitting milestones. You want them putting stuff in the game. You want them working with programmers to get something that is playable. And you want them iterating with your team from all aspects. Lastly, everybody's favorite topic, IP and money. We've found and believe really strongly that shared ownership is a core component to successful collaboration. The mindset, I totally almost said sex there. That's awesome. Thanks to the snicker in the back. I was going to buzz right past that, but somebody laughed. Jerks, all of you. And back into it. Mindsets, they tend to shift when you tell someone, hey, this thing that you're making with us, we own it and you own it. It's not just this thing that you're doing for us. Now, a little bit of time ago, this became a huge topic in the developer-publisher relationship when developers started realizing, we really want to own this too because we really want to care about the end result. What we've learned is that sharing this ownership pays dividends far greater than anything you could possibly do if you owned it by yourself. We want to incentivize our collaborators to care about everything from the beginning to the end, and we want them to have a real reason to keep caring about it afterwards. We want collaborators to push their own work after the project is complete. We don't want full stop at end of development. We want them to talk about the game, to care about the game, and their work on it. I honestly believe that we've sold more copies of our games because Jim Guthrie and because 6955 have gone out there and talked about their soundtracks, have gone to their fans, to Bandcamp, to different kind of music sale points, to actually get out there and say, like, hey, here's a soundtrack from an awesome game. If they didn't own that work, am I going to go out and communicate with music fans out there? I'm pretty sure they would know I was full of shit. And on the flip side, we also believe very strongly that collaborators deserve share in revenue. Now, I don't believe that money drives creativity, but I believe that people who feel that their work is being valued and who have the opportunity to share in the spoils if you make something that really hits, that does help people motivate. It does help people put more into it. And when shit hits the fan, you're going to really put that time in if you know that there's a chance that it's going to go big for you. So I think that when it comes to owning IP and when it comes to sharing in revenue, those are the baseline components of how you treat people well. And when people feel like they're being treated well, they feel like they're part of the team, and they feel like they're part of the success of this project, they're actually going to care more, and they're actually going to push harder. So those are some ideas on how I think collaboration can work extremely well. The fun part is talking about all of the good stuff and all how you shoulds. There are some significant challenges in working with people outside of your studio and outside of video games. The first one is what I like to call the U of video games, the U of game development. So every project starts off with this great idea and tons of excitement. Everybody's really jazzed to be working on it. Pre-production's going on. Ideas are getting thrown around. And then you start making the game, and you hit the middle of the project, and it's the lowest of the lows. Everything's broken. Engines are offline. Models aren't showing up. The game sucks, and it's not fun to play. And then at the very end, you bring it up back, and it's super fun again, and everybody feels really good, and you kind of forget about all that bullshit. Bringing someone into game development who's never experienced that results in a lot of really challenging moments. The idea that you can't see your work because someone else is working on something that doesn't work at all and needs 6 weeks of optimization before you can actually see it on the screen, it's a very challenging thing to tell an artist who's never had to work with a programmer. And it puts a lot of stress on collaborators to actually deal with this new style of development, to making projects in a way that's completely different, and to have to go through all of the bullshit of the middle part of games. Also, it's really challenging to deal with collaborators on the impact of their ideas. I spent a bunch of time talking about how important it is to use collaborators to help generate new ideas, but sometimes those new ideas have really significant impacts, and people who have not developed games before have a lot of problems kind of realizing what those impacts are. An idea that might seem super simple to an artist who's used to drawing, it's very easy for them to miss the fact that that simple idea is like dropping a stone in a pond and rippling out. A single idea affects programmers, it affects production, and affects budgets. And it's a very challenging discussion to have with people outside of games because, again, a lot of the people that we're working with or you can work with are going to be freelancers, people who have made music by themselves or in bands. They've never had this experience of watching art meet craft, and craft sometimes totally stopping art. So where do we go from here? I'd personally like to challenge the industry and every single solitary person in this room to challenge themselves to kind of think about collaboration. If you're a small independent studio, all the way up to if you're a AAA studio working on the world's biggest franchise. Think about how you can bring people from outside of video games into your development. Every so often on Twitter, which we all love, somebody pops up and says, hey, I'm an amazing artist with this beautiful portfolio of completely unique work. I love video games, and I'd really love to take part. And wouldn't it be awesome to be able to say, yeah, actually, let's do that. Let's, Julian Glander, let's make a game together. I didn't actually know whose tweet that was. Or it could even spread further than that. Collaboration could actually get bigger in our industry. Imagine, and this is an Alec Holoka tweet. I'm like totally Alec Holoking all over the place in this talk. So he tweeted, imagine if the creator of Towerfall and the artist from Nuclear Throne made a Sonic game. And at first, that seems ridiculous, but it actually seems ridiculous in an amazing way. And I wonder if there's how many opportunities there are out there for the people running the biggest brands or people who hold the most unique licenses to kind of foster these amazing kind of collaborative experiences based on these venerable franchises. Whether it's artists, musicians, directors, writers, there are people outside of this industry right now looking at us and saying, I really want to be a part of this. I have a great idea for a game, or I want to contribute to a game, or I want to just be part of the creation of a game. They want to share their ideas. They want to share their stories and their visions with us. These people might actually be the missing piece of something really interesting, unique, and new that helps drive games forward, or even on a more micro scale, helps drive your studio forward. If you trust them, if you can create some kind of shared creative vision, make them a part of your development, and then be fair with them and give them some skin in the game, they can actually be a huge part of your studio's growth, a huge part of the industry's growth, and you're going to make some amazing stuff together. So I really think this is something that whether you're the smallest of small or the biggest of big, think about it. And it's done so well for us and been such a huge part of what Capy has done and what we keep wanting to do that I can't help but want to share that with people. So go forth, collaborate. Thank you very much.